Wow. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Cornelia Beckett. I'm here with Alabama Public Television's Education Department. I'm joined today by Amy McDonald from the Alabama Holocaust Education Center. And today we'll be talking about how resources from Alabama Public Television and from uh, AHEC can help sensitively, accurately, and appropriately teach about one of the greatest tragedies of all time. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to take a look at Alabama Public Television and the resources that we have to offer. So I'm going to go ahead and present. Excuse me, there's one moment, please. All right. So PBS Learning Media is the high quality educational media platform from PBS, and we are APT. So here at Alabama Public Television, we are the state affiliate of PBS. So we represent the entire state of Alabama. We're based here in Birmingham, and our mission is to educate, entertain, inspire, and inform Alabamians. To that effect, we create our own educational content as well as distribute nationwide content from other stations. You can reach us on broadcast television, on your app, online at aptv.org, and more. So our education website is where you'll find more information on professional developments like this. PBS Learning Media, as I mentioned, is our high-quality educational materials resource center. Since there's no elegant way for me to toggle in between a slide deck and the web, I'm going to go through my deck first, then I will quickly show you our website, and then we'll hear from Amy McDonald about best practices in teaching. So just a overview of some of the wonderful resources that we have on PBS Learning Media. One produced by our team here at Alabama Public Television is Meeting Max. It's an incredible series about Max Steinmetz, a Holocaust survivor who lived here in Birmingham after the war. The three-part series tells his experience through the eyes of Luke, a high school student, making history come alive and providing an empathetic viewpoint into this incredible story. It's a three-part series, and we have teaching tips and extension activities and more available on PBS Learning Media. And I'll go into how you can access those and how you can share them when I toggle away from the slide deck to PBS Learning Media. Our friends in Kentucky at KET created an incredible series called Lessons of the Holocaust. It's got several subheadings. I'm going to walk you through them now. So the Murals of the Holocaust series from KET is a fantastic series about how students in Kentucky have the experience to study history and to process their learning and their emotions through educational murals that they then make and exhibit. It's this incredible, sensitive, multidisciplinary arts and social studies and service learning experience that's outlined. Juliet's Violin is a wonderful presentation, extremely moving combination of classical music and testimony from history that brings to life the tragedy of a musician caught in a concentration camp. And then there's a collection within KET's Lessons of the Holocaust collection called Teaching the Holocaust. It's got a series of videos on pedagogy, on hands-on activities that include a photo project, the murals project that I mentioned, using art to process student understanding, murals, timelines, how you can just incorporate this multidisciplinary understanding. But I'm going to escape out of the slide deck now I'm going to take you to PBS Learning Media here. So as you can see, this is PBS Learning Media. I highly encourage you to sign up for an account. It's free. Um, it's just a fantastic resource. Of course, you can use PBS Learning Media without an account, but with an account, you can favorite and you can make folders, and I'll take a quick look at that. So as you can see, we cover every topic. Of course, right now we're talking about social studies, but every topic is covered. So it's just a fantastic clearinghouse for educators. You can sort by grade. Amazing new resources are uploaded all the time. Going here to my dashboard is kind of where I can begin to build a lesson. You can build a lesson right within the platform. You can create assignments. It can be aligned with Google Classroom. You can create classes within. You can favorite videos to save them for later. And you can create folders. And here I have this amazing folder. I have a URL that I will share in the chat later in this presentation, but just taking a look in the folder, I have all these wonderful resources. So you can check them out. You can social share. You can even make notes about the resource, and just clicking through to Meeting Max, you'll see that you can share to Google Classroom. Um, Looking through to the videos as well, it's really great. You can click through and see the standards of the Alabama State Department of Education that we are aligned with. So looking at that is really amazing. Notice also the content warning. And I'd just also like to point out another great example of content. So we've got this wonderful collection from KET. Looking in the murals section, we've got some support materials for teachers. So if ever you're looking to dive deep on PBS Learning Media, we often have support materials for usage with teachers. This incredible PDF of a teacher packet created by Jeffrey Jamner from Kentucky Performing Arts, really prepping students with how to deal with the field trip, goals, stories to tell. There's background reading. There's a learning activity. There are even discussion questions from students and a handout. So these are just some of the examples of rich and rigorous and great material that you can find on PBS Learning Media. So you can sign up for an account, check us out. Students can also have an account. We'll just take a quick look at what this would look like from a student perspective. You can enter a code from your teacher, or you can simply dive in, and students themselves can engage. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my share for now, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague from AHEC, Amy McDonald, with strategies about how we can teach about the Holocaust.
Hi, thank you so much, Cornelia. Let me introduce myself really quickly. So I'm Amy McDonald, and I work with the Alabama Holocaust Education Center as the Director of Education. I just retired from teaching this past December, actually. Taught for 28 years and taught Holocaust Studies, AP US History, and US History Part 2. So a lot of these strategies that I'm about to share are things that really helped me in my, in my job as a Holocaust educator. So I'm going to share my screen here. Okay. All right. So I'm going to share 10 guidelines to teaching about the Holocaust. And these are a combination of guidelines and kind of professional development and teacher training that come from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C., and also from Echoes and Reflections, which is they do a lot of teacher training, a lot of teacher PD, and they are in partnership with the ADL the USC Shoah Foundation, and Yad Vashem. So this is a combination kind of different things that I've done with both of these organizations and ones that I have found the most helpful. So when we're talking about teaching the Holocaust, obviously it's a very difficult topic. It's a very complex topic. And, you know, a lot of teachers might feel a little uneasy even in diving in and teaching this really complicated history. So the first thing up would be, and this sounds really, really simple. And let me go back even before starting with the first guideline. You know, we always have to be mindful about historical accuracy. We always want to use sound educational approaches and best practices, but not listed in these guidelines, but always a number one goal and a number one guideline when teaching the Holocaust is approach everything we do thinking about being respectful, you know, to the memory of the victims and survivors. That is the number one goal and guideline, you know, when teaching the Holocaust. Steps in how to do that, I think, are as follows. And this is where I'll start with the 10. Just basic vocabulary. And this sounds really, really basic, but believe it or not, definitions are important. They provide a foundation. They provide clarity for understanding. And bottom line, they get everybody on the same page. Just to gonna move this. Does that help, Cornelia? Does that help show the screen? Okay.
Looks great. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So in looking at this definition, and it's really, really complicated and it's kind of long, I'm going to make a point here where if you used this definition from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in DC, you know, what words in this definition might our students have trouble with? Because I've used this before, and there are definite, even before beginning to talk about the Holocaust, it's almost like we need to define terms within the definition, just so that they understand what we're talking about. I highlighted a few here, things, just words within the definition that we might need to do a little groundwork on in preparing students to talk about it. And in looking at this, you know, Jewish people were the singular targets. They were the primary victims, targeted because of who they were. You know, there's a distinction. The Nazis and their collaborators, they targeted all Jews for mass murder. You know, no such policy with regard to other groups was in place, but still, as teachers, we can still clarify for students, as you look at this definition, that many other groups were targeted during the era of the Holocaust for varying reasons. I've also put some frequently asked questions in. I've kind of scattered them throughout this presentation. But going back and looking at the definition, even just looking at terminology like perpetrators, collaborators, state-sponsored or systematic. I mean, this is terminology that it's really important that students understand before launching in to a discussion about, you know, the background and historical context of the Holocaust. The second guideline deals with providing background on the history of anti-Semitism. I mean, there is a long history of anti-Judaism and anti-Semitism, and it's really important to make a distinction between the two. Anti-Judaism is referring to dislike or hatred of Jews or Judaism as a religion. Anti-Semitism, on the other hand, is hatred of Jews on the belief that Jews are a distinct race. And it's this ideology of anti-Semitism that fueled Nazi beliefs, Nazi ideology. These politics were present in Europe for centuries, even before the Nazi Party came along. You know, Hitler and the Nazi Party did not invent anti-Semitism, but it was really central to their beliefs. And the Nazi Party merged racism and anti-Semitism. And now, even more so now today, it's really, really important when we teach about the Holocaust that we've got to be very intentional in teaching about anti-Semitism. At the end of the presentation, I'm going to put in the chat a really great document that from USHMM that gives some frequently asked questions by students, and it provides really great sound responses. Third guideline, the Holocaust was not inevitable. History is the story of choices. Many leaders, governments, institutions, ordinary people made choices throughout the Holocaust that allowed it to take place. They made decisions, people made decisions, governments made decisions, groups made decisions to act or not to act, and it was a systematic process. Many people were involved along the way. Legislation was enacted, laws were followed, individual initiative was taken. And recognizing historical hindsight that we have now is really critical. I mean, we have the luxury of looking at this history now through the lens of past events. And this is really important to emphasize to students, because otherwise they may not really understand just the vast array of motives, pressures, fears that were at play and that people were faced with in the past. And the bottom line, people always make choices, and the future is not inevitable. Number 4, and this is really important, avoid simple answers to complex question. The history of the Holocaust raises many, many, many difficult questions about human behavior. And we need to be really careful about simplification. Instead, you know, our goal needs to be to portray the nuances of history. I mean, many factors and events contributed to the Holocaust and made decision-making really, really difficult and really, really uncertain. Moral dilemmas, the concept of choiceless choices. It's, I think, important to be sure that we say that we don't ask the question, what would you do? Because none of us know what we would have done, but what choices were there? What choices were there in that time and place for people to make? And this allows students the opportunities to practice thinking about really, really hard things. The 5th guideline, strive for precision of language. Precise language is really important. It's critical when we're discussing history. Incorrect terminology, it creates confusion, spreads misinformation, and we all sometimes, whether we want to believe it or not, have a tendency to generalize things. And in doing so, that distorts the facts. For example, things like all concentration camps were killing centers, or all Germans were collaborators, or all Germans were Nazis. Another example, when referring to Auschwitz, we need to specify that it was located in German-occupied Poland. It was run by Germans. Therefore, it was not a Polish killing center. Language like that is inaccurate. We need to avoid and encourage precision of language by encouraging students to distinguish between differences? For example, I hear this question a lot from students. Resistance, for example, students are usually in their minds referring to armed resistance, some kind of armed revolt. But during the Holocaust, resistance also involved other types of resistance, smuggling food, smuggling weapons, smuggling messages. Resistance also included cultural and spiritual resistance, secret schools, soup kitchens, continuing to practice religious traditions, creating art, music, and poetry in ghettos and concentration camps when these things were outlawed. These are also different types of resistance. Contextualize the history. This is huge, especially for me as a history teacher. We need to contextualize through artifacts, through primary sources, because these are the evidence of what occurred during the Holocaust. ELA teachers, it's really, really important to provide historical context when for literature that you use in your classroom. For example, if your students are reading Anne Frank, or if your students are reading Knight, consider the historical context that you need to provide for students to really understand the who, what, when, where, why, the greater scope of the Holocaust, and how this book fits into the bigger picture. The next is avoid comparisons of pain. Respectful, responsible teaching should not try to rank or grade or put pain on any type of hierarchy. It's possible to discuss the different experiences of different groups of people without comparing their suffering. We're not trying to determine whether one group suffered more than another. We can't presume that the horror of an individual, a family, or a group, or a community destroyed by the Nazis was any more painful than that experienced by victims of other genocides. And we should avoid any type of generalizations that suggest otherwise. Being specific about the experiences of various groups helps students to understand the wide range of people whose lives were shattered during World War II and the Holocaust. It's important to distinguish between making historical comparisons and making comparisons of pain. We can study how and why Jews were targeted and how and why other victim groups were targeted without comparing pain and suffering. This is probably the guideline that means the most to me, if I could choose one, and that's translate statistics into people. We always hear the number 6 million Jews were murdered during the Holocaust, but that's impossible to comprehend. It's overwhelming, it's challenging, it's incomprehensible. We can't comprehend it, our students can't comprehend it. So what is it that we want our students to know and understand about that? It's the 6 million, it's not just an anonymous 6 million. They all had a story and they all became victims. Every single one was someone. Our goal should be to focus on the human story. You know, with statistics and dates and events, we sometimes tend to forget that people are at the heart of the Holocaust. And individual stories really do create points of entry. They provide opportunities for us to tell a story, to cause a connection, and then maybe to be able to launch beyond that and say, now what? Where does this lead? An important thing in Holocaust education is to talk about the victims' lives before the war, pre-war Jewish life. You know, Jewish people didn't live their lives in the shadow of the Holocaust. and it's the human story that resonates with people. The perpetrators did not see their victims as human beings. So it's our responsibility to do that. We study the victims to learn about the human spirit. And I can't stress enough how important it is in our classrooms to use survivor and witness testimony whenever possible. And this is there are so many ways and resources, different ways to do that. Short clips. There's so many ways to use short clips of survivor testimony in your classroom. I want to play this clip. Cornelia has already mentioned the documentary Meeting Max, and just kind of how this would impact what students might gain from watching this clip in class.
Soccer was a very important thing. We played soccer, swimming. We lived right across the street, yes, from a river, a very large river. So if I went out our front door, I only 50 feet, that was a river. And we went swimming there. We went fishing there, swimming in the river. And the river was very, very important to us children.
I think with students especially, this is a focus on pre-war Jewish life, on Max's life before the war, and it really humanizes him. He talks about playing soccer, he talks about swimming, he talks about friends, and this is a way to really tell the human story when we're teaching about survivors and victims of the Holocaust. Okay, the 9th guideline, avoid romanticizing history. For example, we know that most individuals in German-occupied Europe, they did not actively collaborate in the Nazi genocide, nor were they rescuers, nor did they do anything to try to help Jews and other victims of Nazi policies. You know, while we might wish that the number of rescuers, for example, was higher, only a very small percentage of the population actively aided Jews during the Holocaust. So one example of not romanticizing history is not overemphasizing rescuers, for example. It gives students a skewed picture of the Holocaust. I mean, these people who were rescuers, they did so at great personal risk. They exhibited great amounts of bravery. Their choices were incredibly brave, but unfortunately, these stories are in the minority and must be kept in perspective. We don't want to leave people with the impression that these heroic acts were common. We can teach from these heroic acts, and there's wonderful things we can teach from these examples, but we don't want to create a false sense, for example, of what actually took place. Often when people are discussing the Holocaust, people are categorized. They're put in categories. They're labeled victims, perpetrators, bystanders, and rescuers. And these categories kind of misrepresent a much more complicated picture. We've got to understand, this is a good way to organize, but we've got to understand that things were a lot more complex than this. People acted in a variety of ways. They were influenced by many factors, things like just the hardships of war, fear, greed, personal gain. People acted in a variety of ways, and sometimes their behavior changed over time. And the last guideline, make responsible methodological choices. This comes from USHMM, and they point blank state, the museum does not endorse simulations attempting to convey the suffering or horror the victims experienced. These responsible methodological choices, they help us set boundaries for the classroom. It's impossible with things like simulations. It is impossible to recreate any of these horrific situations that victims endured. It can traumatize students if we try to ask them to imagine the experiences of these events. What we want to do is let students hear the voices of the survivors and the victims. And because students will be able to connect with these stories in ways that are really meaningful. Everyone processes information differently. It's frustrating sometimes if we want students to respond a certain way and they don't. We can't try to force an emotional response or think that students should respond in some, specific way. Emotional responses aren't really accurate barometer of student understanding of what they're learning. So it's important for us to select lessons and resources that don't exploit students' emotional vulnerability or anything that might be construed as disrespectful to the victims. One of the best things I heard at a teacher training workshop that I've always remembered was, it is our responsibility as teachers to guide students safely in and then to bring them safely out. Teaching is, I've been there. In fact, I still feel like a teacher most days, even though my role is different, but teaching is an evolution and we're all learning together. And I think the guidelines are a great place to start. So, oh gosh, wait, Cornelia, I'm sorry, I meant to share one more thing.
That's quite all right, Amy. If you'd like
Let
to
me
go
pull
ahead
it
and
right
screen
back
share,
up.
there you go.
There we go. Okay. Gosh, am I stuck here? I wonder what happened. Okay, let me see if I can pull this up. I wanted to invite everyone. We are having a teacher workshop on April 4th in person, Thursday, April 4th. It's going to be amazing. You can register online at our website, but the speaker, Cheryl Ohayon, is coming from Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Israel. And she's going to be doing 4 different sessions. It's a day-long workshop. The final solution in literature, photography, art, Jewish resistance, rescue, and then the role of women during the Holocaust. There's Power School registration already set up, and the AHEC reimburses for substitute teachers up to $100. So we're really hoping that we're really excited about this workshop, and just wanted to invite people to attend.
Thank you so much, Amy. We encourage all viewers to check out more resources at AHEC's website. Please follow them on social media. Check us out at aptv.org. We're also at pbslearningmedia.org. Follow us, APT Education, on social as well. And of course, feel free to reach out with any questions that you have about how we can help you teach the Holocaust or provide additional media resources. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and pause.
Thank you.